Breaking news begins this hour. Law enforcement in England have arrested former Prince Andrew on suspicion of misconduct in public office. The disgraced royal family of King Charles is alleged to have shared confidential government documents with the notorious pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. Live pictures now, and that is Andrew's residence at Sandringham Castle, about 100 miles north of London. Police have been searching that property for hours. They are also now at his Windsor estate, which is about 50 miles west of London. Fox News legal editor Carrier Bond.
I would imagine the UK court is going to take into consideration, because it's going to hinge on how serious a breach of duty was this. Is the public trust threatened by what he did? Was there harm? And was this information, though, inherently confidential? And that will be an interesting, I think.
In October, King Charles stripped his younger brother of all of his royal titles. Today, King Charles offered his full support and cooperation in the investigation into Andrew. In a statement, King Charles said, "Let me state clearly, the law must take its course." Eric Shawn is on the story, developing still at this hour. Eric.
Hello, Harris. Well, it is a stunning development following the release of the documents in the Epstein scandal. The arrest of former Prince Andrew on suspicion of misconduct in public office. The younger brother of King Charles was taken into custody at his home by Thames Valley Police after those revelations from the Jeffrey Epstein files released here in the U.S. Police previously said that they were assessing if those emails show Andrew giving Epstein inside information about government business and investment opportunities. They include details of Andrew's official trips and confidential briefings that he had while he served as Britain's trade envoy in 2010 and 2011. That would be a violation of the Government Secrets Act. Now, despite the arrest, Andrew's brother, King Charles, is keeping up a public schedule today. He attended a London fashion event today, and he said he does support the investigation. Quote, "I have learned with the deepest concern the news about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and suspicion of misconduct in public office. What now follows is the full, fair, and proper process by which this issue is investigated in the appropriate manner and by the appropriate authorities." You know, Andrew has long been accused of sexual misconduct with underage girls provided by Epstein. He has always denied any wrongdoing. Epstein victim Virginia Giuffre, who wrote a book about it, and she committed suicide, sadly, in 2024. Well, she had said that Epstein had forced her to have sexual relations with Andrew when she was a minor. Her lawsuit against him was settled. Her family reacting to Andrew's arrest today by saying, quote, "Today our broken hearts have been lifted at the news that no one is above the law, not even royalty." Well, the arrest happens to come on Andrew's 66th birthday and is just the latest fallout from this growing scandal. Already several prominent politicians and business people around the globe connected to Epstein have resigned, and there's lots of speculation that more names could be made public, and we could even see more arrests. Harris?
Eric Shawn, thank you very much. Despite recent scandals and upheaval, a majority of the British public see the royal family in a positive light. A recent survey finds 54% hold a favorable opinion of the royals. Question now whether that will stand.
It is an absolute bombshell. I mean, to put this into context, there has been no member of the royal family arrested in my lifetime. I'm 60 years old. If you have to go back centuries to the last time that a member of the British royal family was arrested. And this is a serious matter. This might just be the tipping point of a gigantic scandal, which represents, I would argue, an existential threat to the monarchy itself.
Let's get into that. Hilary Fordwich, British Royals commentator. Great to see you today. Thank you for joining me. We'll get to the kind of the politics and what moves forward. I'm curious, how long do you think this has been coming? I mean, they had targets here, they moved in, and they are searching them.
Well, pleasure to be with you, Harris, although ghastly circumstances. They have moved fast. This was the Thames Valley Police that drove all the way up to Norfolk, which does, even though it's only about 50 miles, it does take quite a bit of time to get up there, hours, actually. I think what is really important about what Piers Morgan said there, an existential threat. I would not be shocked, Harris, to see King Charles have to abdicate over this. When you gave that poll, the poll was correct, but it was very important to note the date. That date was October, November of last year. Right now, the poll is much more like about 28% of the British public are approve of the way the royal family's been handling this. And I will say Prince William has been behind zero tolerance. Better late than never for King Charles, but he's putting his foot down finally to preserve the royal family.
All right, when you say abdicate the throne for King Charles, that is glaring. So I want to press in there. What makes you say that, and how quickly could that happen?
Yes, I'm not stating that as fact. I'm stating that more as opinion and conjecture because, Harris, this is not just about this current issue. This is about who knew what and when. Think about, like, obviously President Nixon, what brought him down, and it was the fact that he knew about this and covered it. So it's who knew what when, and think about all of those, the detectives. Think about the fact that Prince Andrew then, that's who he was then, used to have these young women trafficked, basically, to Windsor Castle, to Buckingham Palace, and they were giving the name Mrs. Windsor at the gates. So the protection officers knew, the police knew, and obviously there were many reports of this, and it was dismissed, it was overlooked. Now what we're seeing with this misuse in public office, though, it's rather like, it reminds me of Al Capone. Remember all those dead bodies, Harris? But it was cheating on tax evasion that eventually had him jailed. I think you can see Andrew jailed, and I think King Charles, given his health issues too, by the British public, it'll all come down to polls. He might abdicate over this because Prince William has stood fast the entire time with zero tolerance on this, and he wanted him as far away from Windsor as possible, hence the ousting from Royal Lodge.
Right. To further that point, you know, from the King this morning, he said what now follows is the full, fair, and proper process by which the issue is investigated in the appropriate manner and by the appropriate authorities. I mean, if he is staying or if he abdicates, however which way it goes, his son, William, now is the future. So this sets him up. Everything's got to be above board.
You're absolutely right. You're actually stating what is the most important. And notice from that statement that Eric read for us from King Charles, what was very important. It's not just what was said, Harris. It was what was omitted. What was omitted? He didn't refer to Andrew as my brother. He didn't refer to him as a member of our family, which the royal family inevitably does. He stated just his name. So there has been, as I said, Prince William, zero tolerance. That's why they've ousted him, stripped him of his titles, everything that was honorary to him. And I think probably one of the very many sad issues about this is Andrew has squandered the support of the British public because he was a war hero. He was favored by the nation, and he has squandered it due to his debauchery. And last but not least, a very dear former FBI friend of mine has always said, Harris, when there's debauchery and deviant behavior in one aspect of someone's life, it'll show up elsewhere. And this is showing up in his misuse in public office.
Hillary, always great to have you on the program. Thank you very much.
Story of the day. Big news out of the UK. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, the former prince, has been arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office over allegations that he sent top-secret government documents to Jeffrey Epstein. Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Kayleigh McEnany. Here is my co-hosts, Harris Faulkner and Emily Compagno. Also joining us, Lisa Booth, Fox News political analyst, and Paul Morrow, attorney, retired NYPD inspector, Fox News contributor, and host of the weekly rap sheet on Fox Nation. Well, in a statement, his brother, King Charles, says that he supports the law and the investigation of his younger brother, saying in part, quote, what now follows is the full, fair, and proper process by which this issue is investigated in the appropriate manner and by the appropriate authorities. Let me state clearly, the law must take its course. Now, the family of Virginia Giuffre, who said she was trafficked to have sex with former Prince Andrew when she was a teenager, releasing an emotional statement in the wake of his arrest, writing, quote, today our broken hearts have been lifted at the news that no one is above the law, not even royalty. On behalf of our sister, Virginia Roberts Giuffre, we extend our gratitude to the UK's Thames Valley Police for their investigation and arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. He was never a prince. For survivors everywhere, Virginia did this for you. Paul, when we look at what the charges he is looking at now, unrelated to Virginia Giuffre,
right,
they spur from this Justice Department release of these Epstein documents, tons and tons of pages, and it's totally separate from the sexual allegations.
Yeah, and you know, I've somewhat lost a thread on the Epstein thing just because it's been so long unwinding, and all of us have so many stories to cover. I've been tuning in lately, and I have to tell you, there's some meat on the bone there. Some of this stuff in relation to, let's say, Bill Clinton, for instance. Clinton apparently stormed into the offices of Vanity Fair, it's in the emails, and told them, you will kill a story about my friend Jeffrey Epstein, and they did it. I mean, what happened to the First Amendment? These are people who are screaming censorship right now. You got people on other networks right now saying Donald Trump is censoring our network. You know, I don't have to say any names. We all know what I'm talking about. And yet he was able to walk in and kill a major feature story just like that about Epstein. And you got to say to yourself, why? Relative to the British royal family, to me, this is kind of one of the last nails in the coffin for them. You know, look, it's an anachronism. We all know it. I'm something of a traditionalist. I think that it is good for England and it's good for the West to be connected to their past. I'm tired of listening to the West apologize for itself. But at this point, you have to kind of say to yourself, when you have characters like this doing this, this guy didn't have a job, he didn't have a role, he didn't have anything, yet he's giving up secrets and he's palling around with Epstein. It's all in as recently as World War II, Churchill would consult with King George. Those days got to be over. How this guy was privy to any trade secrets are ridiculous. Let them stay isolated as a kind of an institution they can all look to, but keep them out of your business, UK, because you're getting nothing but pain from it.
Emily, so separate from this arrest are the allegations of Virginia Giuffre. And if we have that picture, I want to pull it back up. This is a picture of the young Virginia Giuffre with Prince Andrew. And I was watching an Epstein documentary this weekend, Emily, and I watched Prince Andrew on the BBC say, I can tell you categorically, I don't remember meeting her at all. I don't remember the picture being taken. I have no memory of it being taken. Well, it clearly was taken, and you're looking at it. And I watched Virginia Giuffre react to that interview when she was still alive. We know that, unfortunately, she died last year. She said that she was sitting outside having her cup of coffee. She wanted to throw her tablet in the pool. And her words were, as a victim, one thing we ask for is some acknowledgement, some remorse. And I wish she was here to see this day that there's at least some justice that is being looked at in a separate case.
I can't presume to know what it would feel like to be one of those mass trafficked victims. However, I'm not sure if this does provide any modicum or would provide any modicum of reassurance that justice indeed turns, because this charge is completely unrelated. And while we know it's a civil offense essentially in the UK, if the Crown Prosecution Service decides to go through with this, he could be facing life in prison. That's a maximum. You know, who knows what's going to happen? But the reality is that we have been faced, I think, with a reckoning opportunity that the elite in this world, not country, in this world, are frankly perverted and have been used to for quite some time a power structure and an opportunity for perversion unfettered at the hands of an entire class of people that have no means to defend themselves, to protect themselves, or to have a voice. And so all of these victims, the countless victims, because we only know the tip of the iceberg, have been inundated and silenced by things like NDAs. They do not have the means for representation or any kind of advocacy. So for anyone that thinks the buck stops with simply Epstein, and by the way, the questions that you raise, there are so many, Paul, the questions of influence and relationship and leverage and access. Why is this person in the CIA? Why is this person fostering Bill Clinton, a former president, going into and killing stories in Vanity Fair and so much more? So to go back to my point, for anyone that thinks the buck stops with or remains with simply the disgraced Andrew and the horrific monster Epstein, I think they are missing the entire point, which is that there are multiple countries and countless individuals that have preyed on so many women and thought that $100,000 and killing a story would somehow make it right. It will never be right, and unfortunately, I don't know if it will be even in our lifetime.
Yeah, and that story going back to 2002. So you are exactly right. All of the time that passed from then until now. Look, Harris, when you look at Craig Prescott, he's a royal expert. Here's what he said about today and the arrest of Prince Andrew. He said, this is the most spectacular fall from grace for a member of the royal family in modern times. The first time an arrest took place in 400 years.
Yeah, I think we have interviewed, at least many of us here at Fox, Hillary Norwich. She was on last hour, and she analyzes this. She has followed this for many years, has great sources. She questions whether Charles stays. And it's just a question. Does he step back? She said, you know, he's not healthy. But how long did he know what he knew? What did they know when William, Prince William, who would become king, depending on what Charles does, he was very forceful. In fact, you know, he wanted to strip away his power and his influence. That's such a great word. To be influenced and to also influence others. He was right there in the nexus of all of that, Prince Andrew was. And, you know, because there was pressure put on him. He didn't want to lose that salary. He didn't want to lose that position. You remember, it wasn't just like a second. It took a while to get him
Oh, yeah,
to move
he had
on.
the house. He was hanging on to the house. Yeah.
And now they're at 2 residences today, 150 miles outside in Berkshire. So they're looking for all this evidence. And I agree with Emily. I think that tip of the spear and tip of the iceberg. Right? So you've got somebody right now who probably didn't destroy receipts and those types of things. I mean, they are so above with their power, they don't feel like they have to cover their tracks. They are going to dig up everything. We don't even know what they will find at this point. But I thought it was interesting by Hillary Norwich to just say, do you preserve, because my question was, how do you preserve the rest of the family and the future of the monarchy? She said, do you best do that by having Charles step aside and having William step in? What does that look like? And she pointed out there are a couple things that the release, the official statement from the Majesty the King, did not say. It did not refer to Andrew as my brother. It did not say he was a member or is a member of my family. It was stoic, it was clean, it was separate.
So I guess I look at this a little bit different because my question is, why did Prince Andrew feel compelled to share this information with Jeffrey Epstein, share these documents allegedly with Jeffrey Epstein while he was the UK trade envoy in 2010? Why would he do that? Particularly knowing that misconduct in public office could land him in jail for prison. And one of the big questions and one of the big theories around Jeffrey Epstein, because no one knows how he made his up to $600 million, which he was estimated to be worth at the time of his death, or why all these influential figures continue to stay involved with him even after he was convicted in 2008 of trafficking a minor. And we know that the allegation from Virginia, Jeffrey was in 2001. So my question is, did Jeffrey Epstein know about that? Is that potential leverage that was being held over Prince Andrew's head? Because why else would he feel compelled to have shared this information? And that's also one of the theories around Jeffrey Epstein, is that he, you know, leveraged information that he had on people to extract things, whether maybe it's money or information or whatever. And if that's the case, then are there other government figures around the world that have also shared this kind of information? And of course, we don't know the answers to these, but I think given the totality of the information we have, these are fair questions to ask. The last point I'll make about Jeffrey Epstein is he was shady long before this 2008 conviction, and then, you know, what we know about him today. Even in 1981, when he was working at Bear Stearns, there was an investigation into his conduct there. He was facing questions about insider trading with the SEC as well. So this is a bad guy. But my big question is, why did Prince Andrew feel compelled to share this information, allegedly, with Jeffrey Epstein?
And Epstein lied on his resume in order to get those early jobs. So the behavior goes back very far in time. You're exactly right.
Fox News alert here. The royal family rocked after Britain's former Prince Andrew was arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office. He faces accusations of sending confidential government documents to Jeffrey Epstein. Let's go right to Stephanie Bennett. She's in London with the latest. Hi, Stephanie.
Good evening, all. Yeah, it's been a very busy day across London and across the world with these headlines. Today, in fact, marking his 66th birthday. Take a look at some of these images we've received later this evening. Now, these are of Andrew, of course, being released from police custody in Aylsham almost 12 hours after his arrest. You can see him lying back in the seat to avoid cameras. Well, Thames Valley police say he has been released under investigation. They didn't release any further details than that. Of course, he was arrested this morning around 8 a.m. local time at the Sandringham estate. Police were seen searching the property and also at the Royal Lodge in Windsor, where, of course, he lived before being stripped of his royal titles last year. The arrest comes after Thames Valley police said they were investigating claims that while serving as a UK trade envoy, Andrew shared confidential government documents with the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Andrew, of course, has always denied any wrongdoing. King Charles III, Andrew's older brother, brother released a statement saying in part, quote, "What now follows is the full, fair and proper process by which this issue is investigated in the appropriate manner and by the appropriate authorities. In this, as I have said before, they have our full and wholehearted support and cooperation. Let me state clearly, the law must take its course." Now, despite all of this, the king carrying on with his royal duties today, attending an event ahead of London Fashion Week. He did not answer any reporters' questions. President Trump also commented this afternoon saying it's so bad for the royal family, it's very sad to me. Now, of course, misconduct in public offense carries a potential maximum sentence of life in prison. Keeping a close eye on all of this. Back to you guys.
Former Prince Andrew arrested today. He's now released under investigation. It's his 66th birthday. The scandal-scarred former Duke was booked on suspicion of misconduct in public office. Understand the gravity here. A British royal has not been hauled off in cuffs since 1647. King Charles III, Andrew's own brother, speaking out on the arrest. He said, "I have learned with the deepest concern the news about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and suspicion of misconduct in public office. Let me state clearly, the law must take its course. As this process continues, it would not be right for me to comment further on this matter." But we did get a comment in the last hour from President Trump.
I think it's very sad. I think it's so bad for the royal family. It's a very, very sad. To me, it's a very sad thing. When I see that, it's a very sad thing to see it and to see what's going on with his brother, who's obviously coming to our country very soon, and he's a fantastic man, the king. So I think it's a very sad thing.
Worthy of a deeper dive. Let's get into what Andrew is facing. It's not been confirmed yet that he's been charged, but in the UK, you can be held to a maximum of 96 hours before being charged or released. And misconduct in public office faces a potential sentence of life in prison. The former prince has faced mounting public scrutiny when it comes to his ties to Jeffrey Epstein. So let's look at their history. In 1999, Andrew was introduced to Epstein through Ghislaine Maxwell. In 2001, Virginia Jeffrey alleges Andrew sexually assaulted her, though he denies it. In 2010, Andrew visited Epstein in New York after Epstein's sex crime conviction. In 2015, Jeffrey's allegations against Andrew surfaced in U.S. court filings. By 2022, Andrew had settled a civil lawsuit with Jeffrey, and he expressed his regret to any ties to Epstein. Last year, Andrew gave up royal titles. In a 2019 BBC interview, Andrew denied ever meeting Jeffrey, despite this picture. Jeffrey died by suicide last year. Her family released a statement following Andrew's arrest. They say, "We extend our gratitude to the Thames Valley Police for the investigation and arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. He was never a prince. For survivors everywhere, Virginia did this for you." Now, Epstein has become a big hurdle in UK politics. Prime Minister Keir Starmer said this just before Andrew's arrest.
Anybody who has any information should testify. So whether it's Andrew or anybody else, anybody who's got relevant information should come forward to whatever the relevant body is. In this particular case, we're talking about Epstein, but there are plenty of other cases. That's a matter for the police. They will conduct their own investigations. But one of the core principles in our system is that everybody is equal under the law and nobody is above the law.
Starmer talks a big game, but he appointed Peter Mandelson as ambassador. Now, Mandelson is a man with deep ties to Epstein. He had to fire him a year later, and Piers Morgan says the entire British government is shaking over this arrest.
It's increasingly likely, I would say, that other senior members of the royal family are going to have to also be interviewed by the police. So this might just be the tipping point of a gigantic scandal, which represents, I would argue, an existential threat to the monarchy itself. It is that serious.
Is Starmer going to stay in office? The prime minister? Is he basically hanging on by a thread?
Yeah, I think he's a political dead man walking.
Monarchy, royalty, the UK. That, though, is not the entirety of the story of Jeffrey Epstein. There's a lot in the Epstein files, a lot that we know and a lot that we don't know. But what is clear, the fallout is rampant. Bill Gates, who appears in the files, canceling his appearance at an India AI summit. The Gates Foundation says it was to ensure the focus remains on the AI summit's key priorities. The Clintons, they've been called to testify on Epstein, but Hillary says they have no links.
We have no links. We have a very clear record that we've been willing to talk about, which my husband has said. He took some rides on the airplane for his charitable work. I don't recall ever meeting him.
Did you ever meet Ghislaine Maxwell?
I did on a few occasions, and thousands of people go to the Clinton Global Initiative. So it to me is not something that is really at the heart of what this matter is about.
What is at the heart of this matter, of the story of Jeffrey Epstein? There's celebrities all through the files. You know who's on that list? Whoopi Goldberg.
My name is in the files. Yes. And what does it say? It says, Whoopi needs a plane to get to Monaco, John Lennon's charity. And they're saying, do you want to offer your G2?
Okay. And it looks like they said no thanks.
Yeah.
So in other words, anybody can be on this list.
Well, this is my point, because I'm telling you, when I tell you people are trying to turn me into, I wasn't his girlfriend, I wasn't his friend.
Anybody can be on that list. That's actually true. That's the explanation, at least in part, for a name that everyone references in the list thousands of times: Donald Trump. His name is in the files because of anonymous tips deemed invalid. But what is valid? Trump was one of the first to call the cops on Epstein in the early 2000s. Here's what the former Palm Beach police chief said in an interview with the FBI. Quote, Donald Trump told a reader that he threw Epstein out of his club. Trump called the Palm Beach Police Department to tell him, thank goodness you're stopping him. Everyone has known he's been doing this. There's a lot to the Epstein story. Celebrities, mega agents, billionaires. Joining me now to dive into all of it is the Washington Examiner editor-in-chief, Hugo Gurdon. Hugo, thanks for being with us here today. The Epstein files, which have been recent released, are so voluminous, so many names, that it's almost hard to parse out what is invalid and what is valid about a real cancerous relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. 3.5 million pages from a file. There are names in there of people who were wrongdoers. There were names of people there who had associations, or, you know, whether that was Whoopi Goldberg or whoever, who claim that they just had some contact with Jeffrey Epstein, but it was innocent, and there could be, and Hillary Clinton saying thousands of people came to the Clinton Initiative. But you also have wrongdoers, and everybody, not surprisingly, is scrambling to get away and to distance themselves from Jeffrey Epstein. This has been obviously a plague on successive administrations, and the information on various people has been coming out in dribs and drabs. Obviously, the thing today with the news that Prince Andrew, or former Prince Andrew, has been arrested, detained in custody for leaking government documents, is by far the sort of biggest non-sexual scandal. And it does, as one of your guests, Piers Morgan, was just saying before, it really goes to shaking the British monarchy.
Is the British monarchy, and for that matter, much of the world's elite, shaking because of simple affiliations to Jeffrey Epstein, or because they could be potentially among those wrongdoers, as you reference? The names are everywhere. We can see right now what's happening in our economy and in our society, and it's very hard to know because very little is reported. But there are athletes leaving, for example, on almost a daily basis, the Endeavor Agency because of relationship apparently between its founder, Casey Wasserman, and Jeffrey Epstein. There's the Victoria's Secret CEO, Les Wexner, who has a very deep relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. There's former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, who spent a number of nights at Jeffrey Epstein's home in New York City. So how do we do it, Hugo? How do we parse simple affiliations that may include the likes of Whoopi Goldberg or Donald Trump and the real wrongdoers in their relationship with Jeffrey Epstein?
Sometimes we think that transparency is the way to do all this, and clearly there's a case for transparency. But the problem that you have, and we're getting more and more transparency on this, is that the names are all mixed up. There are lists of names, and there's no differentiation in some cases between those who are victims, and normally one does not want to disclose the names of victims, and those who may be perpetrators, and those who are simply associates. It's going to take a fantastic amount of reporting work, and obviously, you know, the Department of Justice has these files. It needs people who know how to look through these things, and now that they're out, obviously they are being sifted. News organizations are looking into them, and other non-news organizations, such as, for example, the organization Republic, which was the ones that sort of demanded an investigation of Prince Andrew. They're an anti-monarchist organization. So what I imagine is going to take place is that these 3.5 million documents are going to be combed through by everybody that has an interest to see if it can help their interest. It'll be combed through by news organizations, which will publish stories, and obviously the Wall Street Journal just published a story yesterday on some of the Prince Andrew material. So it's going to be all sorts of different organizations.
It's just a shame in the end, Hugo, that this didn't happen while these documents were solely in the hands of those who were in charge of investigating criminality. And right now, there's really not many people. Maybe Prince Andrew is the first who've been held accountable beyond Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. Hugo, thanks for being with us.
Let's bring in Neil Sean, UK royal reporter and author, has covered the royal family for more than 20 years. Neil, tell us your reaction to this huge story and what it all means.
Well, good afternoon, firstly, Martha.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, a terrible story. 2 points, right? Let me explain this, and this is exclusively to you. Andrew himself, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, offered voluntarily to go to Thames Valley Police. And it's my understanding this was 3 days ago. Now, it's interesting, isn't it, that they picked, first and foremost, his birthday, 6 or 7 cars, nobody's quite sure, suddenly on site at 8 a.m. This is dramatic. This is to try and get some kind of, you know, exposure, look what we're doing, etc. Now, when I spoke to someone this afternoon, they said that we didn't have all the information required by the fact that he could have come in voluntarily. But the bottom line really is, we know where he is. He's already behind guards. Nobody thinks he's going to escape. And truly, you know, if he'd already offered, then really, why didn't they take up the opportunity then and sit down and say, this is where we're at? It all is a little bit, shall we say, messy.
And who do you think is pushing for that? We know that in just recent days, both the King and William and Catherine made statements to the effect, basically releasing him. You know, this is a legal matter, and we stand by whatever process needs to happen. So who's encouraging this?
Well, there's 2 sides to this, really. Obviously, there's the monarchy side, and there's a family side. And the family side is ironic in a sense, because the Princess Royal, Princess Anne, was actually visiting a prison today up in Leeds, of all places, right? So consequently, you've got the family thinking, what should we do? And today there was going to be a small family celebration, you know, for certain, obviously, close members. The other side of the coin is, and this is where William's coming from, this is the monarchy at risk. This is what's going to happen next. He's looking at his future and the future of Prince George, etc. Now, the only person really that can assist in all of this, in my opinion, is the ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson. And this is because where William was very intrigued by the fact that, think about this, Martha, Prince Andrew, as he was then, was living at Royal Lodge, rent-free virtually for many years and virtually funded. His wife, Sarah Ferguson, was living there, all thanks to the fact that he allowed it. She wasn't paying any rent. Where did her funds come from? Where was the lifestyle come from? And then right at the end, sadly, of her life, Queen Elizabeth allowed Fergie, you know, Sarah Ferguson, back into the fold, something that the Duke of Edinburgh certainly didn't want to happen. Right. And, of course, according to my sources, Prince William too. So, you know, really, if you're looking for somebody to get the inner side story, I believe that she's going to be next to be called in for a brief discussion, to put it mildly.
Yeah. We know that Virginia Giuffre, her family has responded. Here's her brother, Sky, talking about this arrest, even though this arrest is not directly related to Virginia Giuffre. Watch.
I think we're very hopeful that this is the start of the domino effect. This is where the house of cards starts falling. And, you know, kudos to the UK for taking the first step, for saying, you know what, we are going to arrest somebody who is held to one of the highest esteems out there, somebody who was a former prince.
Quick thought before we go here, Neil.
Well, I think, he's spot on, but there are many other people also in this story. And as it unfolds, as he rightly said, this is like a house of cards, a domino effect. People out there who are associated should be very concerned indeed.
All right, we'll see where it goes. Neil Sean, always our royal expert, author. Great to have you with us. Thank you, Neil.
I got a question about some of the big overseas studies of former Prince Andrew arrested by the police there, related to something with Jeffrey Epstein. Do you think people in this country at some point, associates of Jeffrey Epstein, will wind up in handcuffs too?
Well, I'm the expert in a way because I've been totally exonerated. That's very nice. I can actually speak about it very nicely. I think it's a shame. I think it's very sad. I think it's so bad for the royal family. It's a very, very sad. To me, it's a very sad thing. When I see that, it's a very sad thing to see it and to see what's going on with his brother, who's obviously coming to our country very soon, and he's a fantastic man, the king. So I think it's a very sad thing. It's really interesting because nobody used to speak about Epstein when he was alive, but now they speak. But I'm the one that can talk about it because I've been totally exonerated. I did nothing. In fact, the opposite. He was against me. He was fighting me in the election, which I just found out through the last 3 million pages of documents.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.